Hello everyone, I'm Alan, and tonight I'll be refuting, she's not here, but Angel Kang's main claim, which is that individuals who work more than 40 hours a week possess a negative effect on society, and how those that work less than 40 hours a week are a functioning member of society. She supported this claim with three secondary claims, which are: one, working over 40 hours per week leads to increased health problems; two, working overtime decreases the safety of others; and lastly, employers face a higher risk. My response to this claim is that individuals who work more than 40 hours a week and those that work 40 hours less. To start things off, I would like to point out that Angel presented two terms in her main claim. One deals with the negative effect, which comes with working 40 hours a week, and the second one deals with how working less than 40 hours a week leads to becoming a member of society. My opponent should have just simplified one term in her proposition and focused on that term to better strengthen her argument. Another thing that I want to point out is the ambiguity in the main claim about what a functioning member of society really means. Does this mean having a positive impact and not just having a neutral impact on society? In Angel's first claim, she states that working over 40 hours per week leads to increased health problems. What she didn't account for is that how other factors play a role in the overall decrease in health, not just working overtime hours. In the very same article that she sourced, inadequate sleep is also linked to shift work, long work hours, and sleep disorders. Now you might think that individuals getting less sleep directly correlates to working more hours, but that's not necessarily the case. In an article on Time magazine, they highlight a new report by creditcards.com that shows how money is keeping 65% of Americans awake at night. And the same survey found that 38% of respondents said that healthcare and insurance bills are making them restless at night. It's kind of just ironic that one of the main reasons why individuals work overtime is to gain more money and have some sort of financial stability, and that money is a big reason. It's a big reason that they don't get enough sleep, which leads to an increase in health problems. My opponent provided a study which shows that 10% of employees who work 50 to 60 hours per week report severe family conflicts, and how divorce rates also increase when weekly hours increase. She makes the assumption that these factors contribute in turn to mental health and alcohol problems, but fails to provide any evidence which shows that it does. Her first claim was all statistics and evidence, but the reasoning was basically non-existent. In her second claim, she says that working overtime decreases the safety of others in terms of impaired performance, mistakes in medical jobs, and accidents outside of work. My opponent provided no evidence for 2 out of 3 of her subplots. She kind of ties her reasoning together with driving accidents outside of work to accidents in the workplace, such as doctors performing surgery or pharmacists who assign wrong prescriptions. There is no direct correlation between the two, and nor does she provide any reasoning behind her making this assumption. She also does not provide a strong, if not any backing whatsoever, for the increase in impaired performance or lowered attention. The whole second claim just seems like a bunch of assumptions that have little to no evidence. In her third and last claim, she states that employers face high risk. The supporting claim was somewhat vague and had no solid definition or clarity. She didn't really expand on what she really means when she says risk. And my counterclaim to this is that employees don't necessarily face high risk, but instead suffer from inconvenience. And she goes on to name her subplots that decrease productivity and creativity, increased absenteeism, and increased turnover rates. Once again, the amount of sleep a person gets has an effect on productivity. In 2016, Harvard released a study on the relationship between sleep deprivation and work productivity. And the research study found that for the average worker, insomnia leads to the loss of 11.3 days worth of productivity each calendar year, which is the equivalent of $2,280. It might not seem like much, but it would really affect small businesses and its owners. And for example, a small business would involve 15 employees. That would equate to nearly 170 days of lost productivity. This goes to show that working more overtime hours isn't the only thing affecting productivity of workers. She also went on to state that increased turnover rates are negatively affecting employers, which isn't always the case. Turnover rates can also bring in fresh ideas, improve diversity, or even addition by subtraction. An increase in turnover rates can only hurt employers, but also can help them in a variety of ways.
All right, Alan, the organizational stuff is perfectly fine. At the beginning, it was a little confusing about the two claims that you're talking about. Since that never comes up as a big issue in the rest of the presentation, I'm not exactly sure what it gets you by bringing it up here. I think you could probably skip that. The health problems issue, you basically suggest alternate causality. Your primary alternate causality is a lack of sleep, and you also make an argument that says a lack of sleep is not necessarily linked to working overtime. So I thought that was okay. That's a reasonable press. And you also tried to press some of the advocates' use of information there, which was okay. That there's some statistical information that's correlated there. And you say there's no evidence of a link. I could see that. There's that's a press on those particular things. I think you could look at the statistics and say, well, look, if only 10% of the people working over 50 or 60 hours are having this particular kind of effect, it doesn't seem like it's a strong correlation to the work effort, and it seems like there's probably underlying issues there. The advocate's just too quick to assume that work is the explanation for what the problem is there. The safety issue, I think you'd attempt to deny the advocate's equivocation with driving to surgery or pharmaceutical issues. That's a reasonable press there. You say there's no backing for this argument. There's not really any evidence other than the hypothetical that's being presented there. I think that's an okay press there. It would be nice if you could show us some statistical data that shows that the safety on the job has been increasing despite the fact that hours are going up. That would be something that would directly contradict the advocate's position, and the lack of evidence on that, from your point of view, is maybe a little problematic. It's something that we might expect. And then the risk issue on the last point, you basically say it becomes an inconvenience rather than something that's detrimental to the companies. You do suggest, though, that turnover might in the long run be beneficial. That's an assertion on that last point. With the absenteeism issue, I was a little bit confused how that benefits you in the long run. I guess the argument is that you reduce absenteeism to some degree by working overtime, but that was not very clear to me how you were making that particular point. Presentation-wise, you might notice that you didn't look up at the audience very much. I turned around and noticed that several people in the audience are not looking at you either, and I find both kind of a little bit problematic, so we won't pick on you. I'll just take points away from everybody else that I see who has their phone out during these presentations. Yeah, that's what I'll do.